Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video, or as Enzo and Cass might say, how you doing? Welcome to NoDQ&A video. Got more of your questions coming off of WrestleMania. Also got questions as we get closer to the next WWE pay-per-view event on the WWE Network, entitled Payback from Chicago for just $9.99. Let's get down to your questions from twitter.com/AaronRift. First one today comes from Pro Wrestling For You. What's next for Dean Ambrose? He wasn't even on Raw. Do you see him facing Brock once again? No, I do not see him facing Brock again. I think that was a one-off deal. And it's not like Brock Lesnar is around every week for them to have a series of matches. You know what I mean? I think that it's likely we will see Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho. There was the tease on SmackDown, and that was rumored to be the match for WrestleMania until WWE decided not to do Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar and hold that off for a later date. As far as Dean Ambrose's future overall in WWE long term, I think it's pretty clear he's going to be in the upper mid card, and that is where he is going to stay. I think that with all these injured stars coming back, Ambrose is in a little bit of danger of getting lost in the shuffle. Not a lot. I think Ambrose will always be one of those guys that has a prominent role in the company. But with all these injuries, the fact that Ambrose could still not get to the top in WWE and really get that main event push, he did get that title match with Triple H, but really Ambrose has been the guy that's been close but not quite close enough. Similar to a Jeff Hardy. Maybe eventually Dean Ambrose will win as the ultimate underdog, but unfortunately for him, I see it as Ambrose being the Robin to Roman Reigns' Batman. And I doubt that things are going to change. Unfortunately for Ambrose, because he is as popular as anybody in the company, and many would argue that he should be the guy in WWE and not Roman Reigns. Alright, this one comes from Callum Hunter. Do you see Finn Balor waiting until June before he is called up to the main roster due to the NXT Tour of Ireland? It doesn't really matter because guys have been called up in the past when they still had NXT commitments. I mean, Kevin Owens was called up to the main roster when he was still NXT champion. So it's possible that Finn Balor could come up at any time. He could be on the main roster next week, could be a month from now, could be 3 months from now. I think it's best to bring him up when you have a good idea for him. When you have something for him to do that will give him a prominent spot on the roster right from the get-go, then that is when you should call him up. Do not call him up when you're not really sure what to do with the guy. And speaking of that, on the similar topic, this one comes from Callan Sunderland. Hey Aaron, do you see a Shield reunion to take on Styles and a debuting Gallows, Balor, and Anderson? Would that be cool? I've gotten a lot of questions about Finn Balor possibly having his Balor Club debut on the main roster with Luke Gallows, or Doc Gallows, and Carl Anderson, and even AJ Styles, reunite them from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I guess that is a possibility, and I think that that is always something WWE could explore, because a lot of talk has been going around about the Shield reuniting at some point. That's always an option. And if Roman Reigns has a bit of a tough time with AJ Styles and his crew, he could always look to his friend Dean Ambrose and maybe even a returning babyface Seth Rollins. A lot of people think on paper that that would be a very intriguing storyline with a reunited Shield against the Balor Club, and even have a major faction war. Instead of focusing the main WWE storyline on an authority storyline, why not do a faction storyline where these two major factions are battling for control of WWE and being able to say that they run the place? That would be a very interesting storyline. Is WWE going to go in that direction? I have my doubts. I think it would be thinking outside the box a bit, and some out there might be thinking, well, it's not really thinking outside of the box. It's not rocket science. It's right there in front of your face, but this is WWE we're talking about, and I think it would be really cool to do that, but I'm not getting my hopes up. I mean, just the idea of the Balor Club being in the WWE it's one of those situations where I'll believe it when I see it. Alright, this one comes from Sean T. Flick. Should Cesaro have won? It seems too soon for Styles, and the return of the King of the Swing impact was lessened. I think with Cesaro coming back, you didn't really need to have him win his first match when it was a fatal 4-way. If it was a one-on-one match and he lost, then I would say WWE is crazy. But it was a fatal 4-way, and anybody can win in that kind of match. And I'm fine with AJ Styles getting the title shot. He's the guy that could use the match against Roman Reigns and use the momentum coming off of the loss at WrestleMania. I think that it was probably better for AJ to win than Cesaro. Cesaro is going to have opportunities, I'm sure, but he just came back, and let him get used to being back on a full-time schedule again before you commit to putting him in pay-per-view main events. I think WWE made the right call with going with AJ for the pay-per-view, if in fact that is the pay-per-view main event. I mean, as of this recording, I still haven't seen any kind of confirmation that Roman Reigns versus AJ is the main event at Payback. But yeah, I do feel that Cesaro winning his first match back would have been too soon. Alright, this one comes from Wrestling HD9. Do you think Apollo Crews will get the Roman Reigns treatment and get booed because of his obvious push? That remains to be seen. I mean, it is possible that there will be some sort of fan backlash. I know that some fans out there, and myself included, feel that there were other guys that should have debuted on the main roster this past week on Raw. Guys like Samoa Joe, guys like Finn Balor that I just mentioned, Jordan and Gable. There are a lot of guys that should be on the main roster right now, and some would argue that Apollo Crews is not ready for prime time yet. And time will tell if he falls flat or not. If they continue to give him consecutive wins and he's able to build some momentum, maybe things will work out for him on the main roster. But right now, I mean, it's very much up in the air. I'm not sure if he's going to be a major star in WWE at this point. There's just no real way to know with him. I think it would have been better to call up somebody else before Cruz. That's just my opinion. Alright, this one comes from James Bong T-God. Can you see Apollo Crews getting a possible feud with Brock Lesnar and having Brock put him over? That seems to be a long shot right now. I mean, if Apollo Crews really catches on with the WWE Universe and he doesn't get that kind of backlash that Roman Reigns has gotten, then I could certainly see that match being a possibility down the line. Not in the next 6 months or so, but maybe next year, maybe a year and a half from now. That might be a possibility. I mean, quite frankly, you know, again, going back to guys that should be on the main roster, I think that there's money in Samoa Joe versus Brock Lesnar. To me, that match would kick ass. That would be a pay-per-view main event right there. Apollo Crews and Lesnar, I'm not so sure. I mean, I really need to see more of Apollo Crews and what he can do on the main roster. We know what Samoa Joe can do. He had a huge run in TNA, and he's been tearing it up in NXT in the main events. We know the guy can go. He's the real deal. Apollo Crews, time will tell. But I think it's still too soon to really predict what's going to happen with him in WWE on the main roster. Alright, this one comes from Seth Rollins Guy. Which team do you see being more successful on the main roster? Enzo and Cass or the Vaudevillains? I did talk about the Vaudevillains during the previous video, and I think that Enzo and Cass will do better overall, not just as a tag team, but as single competitors. I think that the Vaudevillains, they're going to have a short shelf life as a tag team, and once they break up, if they do break up during their WWE run, I'm not really sure how far they'll go as singles competitors. With Enzo and Cass, I think once their tag team run is over, both of them will have potential to be successful as single stars. And I got this question here from Chris. What are your thoughts on Enzo and Big Cass on the main roster now, and what do you see from them in the future? How you doing? I think part of their success on the main roster as a tag team will depend on how over their act gets with the casual fans. I mean, they got a tremendous reaction on Raw, but that's the most hardcore of hardcore fans out there on that show. And I question how well they'll be received on Raw and SmackDown when you have casual fans that aren't really viewers of NXT. Time will tell if their whole shtick gets a good reaction on a week-to-week basis. But I will say this, even if the tag team doesn't work out, I think that Enzo is a really good promo. I think he's a great talker, and I think that that alone will give him some longevity in WWE past the tag team. And Big Cass is big. I mean, he's definitely got the size and the look going for him, and I can see Vince McMahon looking at that guy and seeing dollar signs in him. So I think Big Cass will go far in WWE just because of the size, and he'll be given the opportunities, I think, because of his size. And Enzo, with his promo abilities, I think he has a good shot at going far as well. Alright, this one comes from EGS, Channel Official. Do you believe that it is over for Zack Ryder now that he lost the IC Championship to The Miz and losing his rematch on SmackDown? I really do. I mean, they did show some backstage segment where Zack Ryder got really angry and maybe he'll turn heel, maybe he'll do something, but like I said, the same problem with Dean Ambrose, and this is even worse for somebody like Zack Ryder, is you are going to have all these guys that are injured coming back soon. You're going to have Randy Orton coming back, John Cena coming back, Seth Rollins coming back, and there's going to be more of a focus on the NXT call-ups. Zack Ryder is going to be right back where he was before winning the IC title, which just goes to show all the more that it was a mistake to put the title on him at WrestleMania, that really the only reason they did it was to shock everybody and have a surprise at WrestleMania, just for the sake of doing a surprise, not because they were planning on doing anything with Zack Ryder post-WrestleMania. So yeah, it really was, in my opinion, the wrong decision to have Zack Ryder win the title and then lose it right away and then go back to being backstage and catering. I mean, to me, it just devalued the title. Alright, this one comes from Kayfabe Candy Ass. How do you feel about Ziggler tuning up the band? Could it cause backlash since he hasn't been portrayed close to a Shawn Michaels level? Well, he's been tuning up the band now for what, 6 months or longer? I haven't even been keeping track of that. I think that people are really indifferent to Dolph Ziggler at this point. I think he could go out there and act like Bret Hart, act like The Rock, act like anybody he wants to. And I think at this point fans are just like, whatever. They'll cheer Dolph Ziggler because he can do some cool spots. But at the end of the day, I think similar to Zack Ryder, Ziggler was gaining a lot of popularity and then the company just gave up on him. Despite the fact that he was getting these huge reactions. And I think back to when Ziggler cashed in the Money in the Bank and won the world title, the reaction he got on that night, the night after WrestleMania, that was just unbelievable, and WWE went nowhere. I mean, he did get injured, but they just never gave him that push again. And I think at this point, fans really don't care. And, some people will cheer him, and some people will just sit and not make any reaction whatsoever. I mean, I think that the time where fans are going to get annoyed with Dolph Ziggler because he's copying Shawn Michaels, I really think that those days are over. If people were going to get mad, they would have done that years ago. Alright, that'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest news and rumors regarding Payback. Subscribe at youtube.com/NoDQCAW. Tell a friend about NoDQ&A video, and I will see you guys next time for more.